everybody. I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Carrie-Anne Wade and I'm the Director of Communications and Engagement at North East London NHSFT, and also the founder of Cat's Pyjamas Communications Limited. But I am on this podcast today in my role as the Vice Chair of the PRCA Public Sector Group, and I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing the chair of that group, Marcus. So Marcus, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, yes, and as you say, my name's Marcus Chrysostomou, and I'm about to reel off a number of titles as well. So I'm Senior Account Director at Westco Communications, so it's a public sector agency. I am also the Head of Communications at Havering Council, so that's one of our clients. I've been there since November. It'll be 3 years November this year. And finally, as you said, I am chair of the PRCA Public Sector Group. And
Brilliant.
Actually now I've got another new role. I'll soon be lecturing at Christchurch University.
Excellent, congratulations.
Yes, I'm quite pleased about that. Yeah.
It's a good job we don't really do the old-fashioned business cards now, isn't it? Otherwise yours would have to be really long to get all of those in.
Yeah, I need a placard or a JC decode board or something. Yeah.
So congratulations on your new role lecturing.
Yeah,
that's very exciting. So you've told us a bit about kind of what you're doing now, but do you want to just tell us a little bit about your kind of background and how you got into communications and PR?
Yeah, so I'm older than I look. So I've been around for a while, and I started my career in the civil service at a tender age. I think I was almost 20. Got my first job in Northern Ireland office working in parliamentary questions. Moved into a private office. Then got a job in Downing Street correspondence section dealing with letters to the Prime Minister. And then I got a job in the press office as the media and office manager. So my role was managing the office, looking after all the photo calls and press conferences, setting up all the backdrops, etc. So I got there in John Major's time, and then I was there when Tony Blair took over, and Alistair Campbell was my big boss. And really, I think things just kicked off for me there. Really, that kind of was when I got that job. It suddenly became a passion for me. You know, it became somewhere I really wanted to be, and you know, I was given lots of opportunity and was promoted a few times, and eventually I moved on to what was known as the Central Office Information. So as many people got fond memories of the CRY. So I went there as a press officer and left as a senior press officer and moved to local government. And I got my first job as the media operations manager in Kent County Council. And I've been working in local authorities most of those years, except I took a couple of years out and worked for myself. I worked for an agency, did my own thing for a couple of years, ran my own little business. Brexit came along, and work became harder. And I got an offer to do some work with Westco, and this was at the time of Grenfell. And they came along and said, "Do I have some capacity to help out at Westminster, the Westminster Housing Elmo, which no longer exists, because they have quite a large large number of homes. Can I help there as the kind of head of comms for crisis comms, I suppose?" And then I got offered a full-time role at Westco, and I thought I might as well take it on because it saves me chasing invoices. So so came back into, albeit I'm at Westco, but came back into public sector, and since then I've worked I think this is my fourth local authority since I took on that role in the head of comms role. So so it's really interesting now. Head of comms at Havering. It's really good because it's part of SLT senior leadership team with the director I work with, and it's been interesting times, as we all know.
I'm sure we'll touch on some of those interesting times as we carry on our conversation, but so you've got absolutely heaps of experience in civil service and public sector service from what you've said, and a wide variety of roles. But it's just a random question I'm going to ask you. When you've worked closely with the prime ministerial offices, do you have to sign something to say that you're not going to tell people all the stories about like the weird letters and stuff they get?
Yeah. So when you join, so I mean, you have to obviously be very wary what you talk about when you join the civil service anyway. But when I went to Downingshire, I had to sign the Official Secrets Act.
Wowzers.
Went through this whole process, and it took about 6 months or so, if not longer. So yeah, so there are obviously things you can't talk about, but yeah, I mean, there's lots of stories I can talk about, which
they might make for a whole other podcast series.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Maybe I'll accept some payment for that one. Yeah.
So obviously we're here because we're part of the public sector group with the PRCA. So for you, what would you say the aims of the public sector group are, and why is it important to you personally to be chair of this group?
Yeah, the group used to exist in one form or another, and then I think it kind of hibernated for a while. And just in context, I used to be vice chair of LG Comms, which is a kind of similar group for local authorities. And I felt that there was an awful lot more we could do to support the wider public sector, because LG Comms is brilliant, and it's there for local government. And in the same vein, there's lots of other groups aimed at, for fire. There's Fire Pro, there's one for police, one for NHS, etc. But I actually felt that it'd be really good to have a body that, a group that represents the wider public sector, because there's so much, positive working or partnership that takes place, more so now because of COVID, actually. And there's things that we can swap and exchange, and actually it'd be really good that we could build a kind of momentum behind a body that represents a wider public sector. And maybe at some point, when I say represent, does more than just meets and has events and the rest of it, but maybe looks at a bit of lobbying for public sector. So I think there's an awful lot of value to be had from working, to run a group like that. And I suppose I'm passionate about what I do, and about public sector per se, public service, because when you work in comms, you're always dealing with a lot of difficult issues, and sometimes when you work in media relations, it's about the stories you stop rather than manage. But there's so much more that we do in public sector, and I think and I've got to say, I've got to draw on what we've been doing during COVID. Comms and engagements moved massively up the agenda, and I think has really shown its value during COVID. And I think it's kind of embodied the kind of thing I want us to achieve from this group, is to show this great joint public service working, and about the impact we've made on residents and people and patients. And so I think there's a lot we can do, and we've started. COVID obviously interrupted the process slightly, but we try to keep ticking over in that time, and I think we've done some good stuff already, but there's more that we can achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. The public sector kind of comms world is one that's come into its own, I think, over the last 12 to 18 months, definitely. And I can just speak from my own experience in public sector comms around wanting to position comms more strategically and demonstrate the sort of strategic value add to organisations. And I think through COVID we've been definitely able to do that. But so much of it has been about partnership working across various different aspects of the public sector. And I think, if we can build on that through this group and that learning, and like you say, maybe move towards more lobbying and representing the profession differently within the public sector, that would be brilliant. So I'm glad that's something that you're passionate about, Marcus.
But just to add to that, I mean, the profession, it is a profession. It has changed awfully, an awful lot since I've been, working in comms, and we're in a completely different world. Some things still remain the same. From a local authority point of view, we've still got local papers, for example. But the way we've diversified. I think it's been amazing picking up some private sector tips, say through programmatic advertising and comms using social media, but also about thinking about diversity in our workforce, and other issues. Actually, I would like to touch upon mental health, and I know you're a big advocate around this as well. There's so much we can be doing, or we are doing, and absolutely, it's great to kind of have a body where we can discuss that and learn from it, but also support and add value, really.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. So I think we've touched on the dreaded C word a few times, that is COVID, not communications.
Can't ignore it, really, can you?
We can't ignore it, and it's been a sort of roller coaster 18 months or so, hasn't it, for everyone, not just in the public sector. But I guess we've run quite a few events now through the public sector group, talking about learning from COVID and how people have coped with COVID. So rather than look back, I thought I would ask you what you think the biggest challenges might be in the next sort of 12 months to come for public sector communicators. And some of them might be related to the big dreaded C word, but I thought maybe a forward look would be good.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go away from it. Yeah, it's an interesting. I think it's an interesting challenge for all of us now, because we've still got the COVID hasn't gone away. So effectively speaking, we're still in the maybe tail end of the pandemic. I don't know, because it depends on do we have any flare-ups again. It looks like we're starting to come out of it, and so that kind of public sector comms around getting your jab, getting tested, etc., is not going to go away. The latest now, obviously, we're looking at boosters for the older groups, and 16 to 17-year-olds getting jabs as well. So that work is not going away. But I suppose it could almost be described as becoming business as usual, because it's now embedded in everything we do. And then the next challenge is BAU, business as usual. It's actually, in some respects, a lot of organisations are trying to or begin to do the stuff they always used to do. I mean, I know at the local authority, and like a lot of other local authorities, they're dealing with the normal day-to-day stuff, and actually COVID has impacted on that quite a lot. And we're delivering a service, and NHS is similar. Trying to cut down on waiting lists again, and deal with your normal ailments, as opposed to COVID. Public sector, local authorities. We're now trying to get HGV drivers to drive dustbin lorries, and we found that grass verges are taller than people, because we've had wet summers, and haven't had enough people to, there's all these things, the business as usual stuff that you deal with all the time, that we're having to try and deal with. And then recovery. So we've got this weird thing of pandemic, business as usual, and recovery taking place. So recovery being, we want to encourage people to go back and use our businesses. We are trying to put our services back to normal, whatever that means. We are trying to enable people to enter our public buildings again, but now wearing masks, or still taking into account social distancing. So it's all kind of morphing as a normal, whatever you want to call that. But there's still tons more challenges, because across the public sector, there's less money still. So COVID has cost an awful lot of money for government, and we've got the settlement, the 3-year settlement being looked at as well. So wait for Chancellor to announce that, and I'm sure there will be some challenges around what that means for public sector. How much money's available. We were all looking at our balance sheets. What's it going to mean next financial year for us? Before COVID, there were some really positive messages about no longer cutting back, governments reinvesting back in public sector service, but COVID obviously came along and interrupted that. So I think the other challenge will be money. It's really interesting, because what the positive out of COVID has been that we had money to deliver some innovative comms, and engagement as well. Let's not forget about engagement. Engagement moved massively up the agenda, and that's a positive. I think people realise how important it is to make sure we're investing in engaging with our communities. So that's been a big plus. But the next issue will be, how can we maintain that? We don't want to lose. We've learned some really positive lessons as well as some difficult lessons as well. We don't want to lose that now. We want to maintain that and keep things ticking over.
Absolutely. And I think probably, I don't know if it's the same for local authority, but particularly for the NHS, I think, workforce was an issue before COVID, and I think it is going to become even more of an issue now, partly because of how exhausted some of the workforce are, partly because I think COVID's helped people to reassess maybe what they value in life and the direction of travel they want to go in. So I think, some sectors will see people lose staff as they start to make different life decisions, I guess. And then again, like you've said, the amount of pressure that there are on public sector services to try and recover from the impacts of COVID means, more stress, more pressure, and like you say, potentially, no more funding to help resolve some of that. So I think workforce is probably going to be a bit of a challenge for us as we move into the coming year or two. I
agree, and workforce also about many of us have been working from home, for example, and public sectors had to review what that means as well. Actually it has been more productive in some cases, but talking of mental health, for example, and not engaging with your colleagues in a face-to-face manner, and all these things that and I think looking ahead, the way we work, I think, will change forever. At my team, the council I work at, we're never going to go back to the way we were, and they'll we've been looking at space and smart working, as it's called, and actually we've just launched a new cultural strategy, taking into account that all the changes taking place and giving it one kind of brand so everyone can understand what that means. And I'm sure lots of other organisations are probably doing something similar, or because we're never going to be in the same place we were. If people can say they can return back to normal, then that'd be really interesting. And it also depends where you are in the country as well. So central London businesses have been impacted differently than businesses in outer London, for example. And so it's less of a chat, it's less of an issue about staff returning back to the office, but I know the government are talking about staff returning back to the office. So I think that's the other challenge, actually, thinking about this is, you'll get certain messages now coming out that we have to interpret or respond to in a certain way, and then sometimes it might conflict with what we want to do as well. And that's another thing we need to look at.
It's like you read my mind when you said that, Marcus, because I was thinking one of the challenges at the moment seems to be around that slight conflict between the government message and then the message in some parts of the public sector. So you mentioned, for example, wanting to reopen and get people using public buildings again, but maybe still with social distancing and masks. And in the healthcare setting, we're saying, you have to wear your mask, you have to socially distance, but actually for members of the community, I think that can feel quite challenging, because on the one hand, you don't have to do that now in your social life, let's call it, but actually then you go into certain settings and you do have to do it. And I think that we might see some impacts around behavioural change as well, in terms of, I think because we've been in the pandemic for so long, we've started to see a sort of natural change in people's behaviours around some of that stuff, perhaps in a more positive way, being more compliant with some of those kind of, the guidance around that. But actually now it sort of depends where you are as to what the guidance is. And I think that can be really confusing for people. So I think that will be a challenge for us as communicators to try and get that right.
Yeah, you're right. And funny enough, I actually went into the office for the first time, not last week before, and I was excited. I was actually I was out of bed at quarter past 5 in the morning. To get
springing out of bed that early to get into the office.
I used to get up 5:30 every morning to get to the office. It takes me 2 hours, and that's because of where I live. But that day I was up early, and I was, whatever, and I was on the train, and actually a majority of people were still wearing masks, for example. But you're right, and I think I think we'll have to find this new balance of how we do this. And in me as an individual, walking around in the street, I'm mindful of how I should behave because I'm expecting other people to behave in the same way.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing about us as being the comms people. You're always thinking about that as well.
Yeah.
It's like I'm pretty good at switching off when I come out of work, but I'm still thinking, I'm still going to wear my mask when I'm getting on the train or walking into a business because I think that's the right thing to do. But everyone's different.
Yeah, and I think that would be the thing, won't it, now that our expectations of other people, we need to think again, because when it was almost like the rules and you all have to act a certain way, then we knew that everyone else was going to be wearing a mask or socially distancing. But actually now, we're putting those expectations onto others that they'll behave the same way that we will. And actually, they might choose not to. And I think it is about that, we're sort of moving away from a command and control type kind of environment to one that is a bit more back to how it was before, where we will have personal choice. And I think that will be interesting to see how that plays out across.
Yeah, exactly. It's like thinking about, when do I switch off from command control? And going back to my earlier point about you're doing business as usual, you're doing recovery, you're still in some form of crisis mode, and you're having to balance. I mean, as a leader as well, you're having to balance different modes now. You still got to do a bit of command and control, but now you're also trying to think of different ways of responding, and you're trying to sit back and let the team lead, for example, so it's a really interesting time. I mean, as a leader, it's an interesting time as well, because we're having to be multifaceted in our approach and how we deal with things, staff, managers and other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving us on just slightly, I guess, in terms of the sort of challenges that you've highlighted and we've talked about, what support do you think public sector communicators in particular might need now to help us prepare for some of these challenges that are coming?
Well, I mean, I suppose this is where the group can come into play, can't it? It's about offering those positive examples, case studies of how other people have done it, because that's the great thing about creating groups like this. That's why it's actually been great being part of LG Comms or PRCA or whatever group you're part of, because you get to talk to other people in similar circumstances and environments as you, but you can also learn from them, and that hopefully the group can offer those positive case studies and opportunities for people to ask other people who are in similar circumstances, but also hear from some of the best people out there who are doing it, living it, and have won awards or have done great stuff that has made a massive difference. And also to just have those round table conversations and chew over those difficult issues as well that everyone's facing, because we can't always come up with all the answers. I mean, actually, sometimes there's more than one answer to the question. So I mean, it's that's what comms is, isn't it? Comms. There's always more than one way of achieving an objective, and it's always great to have different people around a virtual table at the moment, and hopefully we start doing some of these things face to face. We can talk about those difficult, wicked issues that we can look at some solutions for. So I think it's an awful lot of value that this group can offer, and I'm hoping that already we've been able to have some of the events we've already run. We've had some good feedback anyway so far.
Yeah, definitely.
It's always good.
Thank you. And then I guess just to change the tone a bit slightly, because I guess we've talked about challenges which can feel a bit negative, I guess, but I just wondered if you've had a chance to reflect on what you feel most proud of over the last 12 months or so as a public sector communicator. Are there achievements that you feel that either personally or the profession should be really proud of?
I think I kind of mentioned this earlier on. I think the public, especially public sector comms, has really come into its own during the crisis, and I think that's been recognised. It's been recognised. The government recognised it by when they gave funding to the public sector to deliver whatever it is we needed to deliver with regards to the pandemic. It included money for comms. So I mean, cash always helps, but even with no cash, I think the public sector has been innovative, clever, hard. It's hard. It's been hard working. It's been integral to the whole the pandemic response. Public information's been at the forefront, and I think I admire all the work that the public sector has done. And I think at the beginning, when they were designating key workers, we were including that as well. I was strangely proud in that, because as part, they also realised how important it was that we comms people were as part of that. So that meant I was still going into the office and actually got COVID. I was, and then,
I'm not laughing because it's horrible, but it's ironic, isn't it? And
I know it was ironic, and I was sitting with the senior leadership team. Was telling all staff to work from home, and I was in there, and but at least it gave me an insight to what it was like as well, I suppose, having COVID. But yeah, as I think I can only say how amazing everybody's been in what they've been doing and the response. And everyone's had their challenges. The government obviously had to react really quickly, and we as comms people had to react also quickly to the changing goalposts. And I'm not saying it in a negative way, but everyone was really fleet of foot and found ways to respond. But of course, it also opened up some other challenges. We'll go back to challenges like mental health and the rest of it. But no, I'm obviously proud. Personally, my team have been brilliant, and we've won awards as well. We're in for
congratulations.
Awards, because of the great work that they've been doing. And I think, what it did is helped focus, the effort and the team effort around doing some really great comms stuff. And I know other organisations have done similar great stuff. But it has helped us think back to what I was also saying earlier on about thinking about comms isn't just about comms, it's about engagement as well, and about how do we reach those communities we don't normally speak to. So we've worked better with our colleagues in other organisations like NHS. We've worked better with the voluntary sector, our community groups. So there's been really positive outcomes from this, and I think we've come out stronger, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my own team reflected on this a few months back, how, like you say, we've probably never worked harder than we've worked over the past 18 months. And like, particularly at the very start of the pandemic, when, we were all still going in and, being part of incident management teams and the hours that people worked. Yet despite that, I think people have probably been more innovative and delivered more than they probably ever imagined they could. And I know that my own team have done that and almost surprised themselves that, like, not only have we responded to the pandemic, but we've delivered this campaign, that campaign, done all of this work that perhaps we hadn't anticipated we'd be able to do. So yeah, absolutely feel.
There's been some weird outcomes as well. Like, I wear slippers all the time now. I've got more than one pair of slippers. It's just
more than one pair. Oh, you're spoiling yourself.
Well, in the winter, I had day ones and evening ones. It's just ridiculous because that's all you wear.
I love that. We'll know what to get you now for your birthday, Marcus. Another pair of slippers for your collection.
No, yeah, absolutely. I need to add it. But I suppose the other thing is, we are quite many of us are sitting in front of computers like this, and one of the things that we're having to learn is how do we manage our time more effectively. And building things like loo breaks and all that kind of stuff, which is I know it's just the way that we work. And I suppose some of the other benefits is I have spent more quality time, despite the fact we've worked really long hours. I've been at home, so I've enjoyed my garden, and I've seen there's a whole world out there. There's wildlife.
There's a world beyond the train and the office.
Yeah, and there's like a whole soap opera going on in my garden of birds, that I've seen. So there's been some other weird benefits as well. And I've been able to walk down to the beach because I live nearby. I've enjoyed that more. So yeah, some other positive outcomes from this as well.
And I think that's really important, isn't it, to remember that focus on our well-being. And I think, through the PRCA's own research, we talk about how stressful a profession it is actually being a communicator. And I think often it's easy to forget that. But like you say, even the little thing between your virtual meetings seems to be things that we need to think about doing going forward, because
we're not all the same, are we? We're not, because I'm very lucky. I've got a room I can work from, and I live in a nice place and the rest of it. But not everyone's in the same circumstances. So I think, you know, the other bit is about is understanding. The interesting thing about working from home more is that personal life has intruded more in our work life. You know, people got cats and children and dogs and God knows what else. I was talking to a chief exec, and his computer went off because the dog decided to unplug it. You know, it's just stuff like this that you would never have it, and it's okay. You know, we've got used to it. But also at the same time, you know, people have realised what they're missing as well. So you know, they have missed going into the office and seeing people face to face. So you know, I think the new world will hopefully be a mix of all these things. But yeah, it's been an interesting time. I think we've learned a lot about ourselves as well, and I think the public sector has learned a lot about itself.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think from a comms point of view as well, perhaps this new more hybrid way of working offers more opportunities from a recruitment point of view. So my team's seen, you know, a few vacancies come up that we've looked to fill, and actually the types of candidates that we have, because we're saying you don't have to be in an office in Rainham 5 days a week, means that people are applying from different parts of the country and, you know, applying with different suggestions about working patterns, which actually would work really well for the team. So I definitely think from, you know, professional point of view, you know, there are things we can take from it that are more positive. But like you say, with that, those words of caution about just making sure we look after our individual well-being and that of our teams.
It's really important. And you know, for me personally, you know, I make sure I go for a walk in the evening, and I try to go for a walk in the afternoon. I try and have a lunch break, because all these things are really important. You know, I missed the popping shops to get a sandwich type, or the conversation around the water cooler or whatever, you know, but my own ways of building those breaks. But I mean, talking about variety, I mean, I've got a guy working in Scotland at the moment, you know, but it doesn't make any difference, and another person working in Surrey, you know, when the office is in Romford. So you're absolutely right. I mean, there's, you know, you can get other, you know, other talent now. However, you know, from a local authority point of view, I still need local people to go out and do that photo call or event. Of course. So it's good to be able to have that mix, and hopefully, you know, having that diversity means you can get a more diverse workforce, helping you achieve, you know, even better things, really. Yeah.
So I'm mindful of the time. I'm sure we could talk for twice as long as we always say we could at the end of various different public sector group calls and events. But hopefully if people have listened to this and it's given them a bit of a flavour for kind of what the group's about and where we might want to take the group going forward, how can colleagues engage with the public sector group if they want to get in on the action?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, there is a group page on the PRCA website, so you can go on there, and I think our contact details are on there. You can contact the PRCA anyway. If you're a PRCA member and you're on Guild, you know, you can stick a message on there. And also, you know, we're running events, so attend events. You know, PRCA are brilliant at making sure that our events get out there and widely publicised, and you'll probably see myself or Carrie Ann publicising that as well. And also, hot off the press, also looking at a public sector event next year, so a face-to-face one, so a one-day conference maybe. So it'd be good for people to look out for that. We're still in the early stages, but we know there's already a couple other public sector conferences happening this year. So we're looking at early next year, you know, new year, new challenges, and so look out for that as well. We'd love to see people, but hopefully people should, you know, if they keep in touch with PRCA newsletters, etc., they'll see that other events, you know, take part.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. It was lovely to speak just with you, because normally we're either in a planning session or we're with the wider group doing stuff. So it was nice to get to know a little bit more about you and what you're up to and what your thinking is about the future. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you this afternoon.
Thank you very much, and it's really nice to have the roles reversed for a change.
I know, it's nice for me to grill you instead of being the one who got the grilling last time.
Yeah,
hopefully I was kind. I didn't ask you anything too awkward.
You're wonderful. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much, Marcus.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure.